Welcome to another episode of Flashback to the Track on this cold January morning. And I'm here, Mark, as always, and I'm here, of course, on the other side of the world, my friend James. Well, not the other side of the world.
No, we're still in the same hemisphere.
Quite far south of me in the same time zone.
Closer to the equator for sure. And you're closer to the North Pole than I am. So
yes, it's quite cold here. Hopefully not too cold where you are. But how are you doing, James? What's going on, buddy?
I'm good. It might be cold outside, but it's the same temperature in my mouth. So I'm always going to be drinking iced coffee or iced Americanos around this time of year, man. Doing good. Just thinking about, when it's cold like this, you think about like when the season's going to start. Doesn't matter what season it is because, football is ending, but racing season's coming around the corner in the spring or late winter. So, you always start thinking about, oh man, can't wait for the season to start. And every season has a different way of getting started, Mark. Some series like to do like a lot of testing. Some series, they start with a big race. Some series just love to do media day. Media day is always big, but I always like it when there's like a exhibition race. Exhibition races are always fun to me.
I'm not a big exhibition race guy, James. Really not. No.
So SRX wasn't your thing, or did the stipulations?
Well, no, that's different because that's a celebration.
That's an exhibition experience
of all-stars of different types of racing coming together to do something. Like I'm not a huge fan normally of all-star events because they wreck race cars, they cost a lot of money, and they don't count for anything. But back in this time, they felt a lot more special. And today, James, we're going to talk about the 1998 Bud Shootout.
That's right.
So they just felt more special back then because of the people in the stands. And nowadays, the convoluted rules, they change the format every year. It's just, it's tough for me to get into it.
I think as time goes on, things always get more complicated. And that's the problem. This race, when it started out, it was a simple concept, all right? Just a race that arced kind of back to short track Saturday night features. Take the pole winners from the previous season, just put them in a race, drop the green flag, no points to be awarded, just a dash for cash and pride on the line, okay? That's a good kind of race. It was introduced back in 1979. Back then, it was called the Busch Clash. I never knew it as that. I always knew it as the Bud Shootout. Now, the race began as a 20-lap all-out sprint held the week before the Daytona 500. The race was a new concept to reward pole winners. It was a nice perk if you think about it. Driver basking in the glory of being the fastest driver on any given day during qualifying. And the thought pops in their head, wow, I'm also in the Busch Clash. So when they go to Daytona, they get a chance to prove that they are the fastest of the fast. And, as time went on, the race, it just skyrocketed in popularity. And anything during speed weeks just needed to be consumed. And this race always had a place on television. And it was always known as a no gimmicks race. But throughout time, inverts were introduced, the race length was altered and modified. So for 1998, it was time for a fresh take on this exhibition race, something that would arc to the simplicity of its new namesake, the Bud Shootout. So, Mark, let's talk about this race format for here, because it's a little more simpler than it was in the past. Now, Jeff Gordon is the defending champion of this race. And he low-key influenced the rule changes because for 1997, it was a 20-lap race, but they would stop at halfway at 10 laps and they would invert the field. So if you think about it, all you have to do is just run at the back once the invert
sandbag
happens.
The whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't say Jeff Gordon was the only one that did it, but yeah, it's pretty easy to cheat the system when it's pretty easy to cheat.
Yeah, so we're not going to invert the field. We're just going to have basically 25 laps and just go for it, man. But you do have to make a mandatory pit stop between lap 10 and lap 12. So that's going to shake things up. You have to take minimum two right side tires not left. So that's going to be very interesting because, that might help the guys at the back, gain some positions, and it brings the crews into it. You see Larry McReynolds, he mentions it before the race, that it's great to bring the crews and get them involved in this because, it's a team sport and it showcases everyone. And later we would see that with the All-Star race qualifying format, include a pit stop, get the crew involved. And I think that's pretty cool. This is probably this is the goated Bud Shootout format, James. This is the best one.
It is. And you know what is also great about this? There is so many, aspects of this race being drawn out and long. Like, what was it? I think it was 70 laps back when I was a kid. That was a long time. This is only 25 laps. I think the 5 additional laps, just long enough. Not quite 20, just, the extra 10 miles there at the end. Anything can happen in 5 laps. And this edition really does showcase that, Mark.
And let's talk about the eligibility for this one, James. So, the eligibility has obviously changed over the years, allowing past champions in, past Daytona winners, all these different things. But it was very simple. It was only pole position winners from previous seasons that would clinch an automatic spot in this race. And now only the driver was eligible, not the team. Nowadays, you'll see sometimes they'll allow, well, the team won the pole last year, so we'll let them in it. Nope, just the driver. It was a driver's reward. And drivers that were the fastest qualifiers from the previous year's races during second round qualifying were eligible for 1 wildcard stop. Now, James, I don't know if you want to go into explaining second round qualifying or not, but back then we had multiple rounds of qualifying in the Cup Series. So they introduced that wild card in 1997. We're going to keep it for 1998.
Yeah, second round qualifying lasted all the way through the year 2000. It was just a way to give drivers and teams another opportunity to try to lock themselves into the field. And it was normally held the day after first round qualifying, and it would consist of everyone from 22nd on back. So if you were 22nd on back, you could choose to remove your time, redraw, and set a different time. And Mark, sometimes, dude, people would go out and set times that were faster than the pole speed. So it's kind of funny. You would hear new track record. When was it set? Oh, second round of qualifying. So where are you starting? 22nd. So
hey, when your back's against the wall, man, you got to find some speed, make sure you're in the show. And sometimes those slower, in air quotes, cars at the back of the field, wind it up. Let's go. We got to make the show. So new for 1998, though, the wildcard spot is going to be awarded to the winner of another 25 lap qualifier held before the main feature, we'll say the shootout race. And this race follows exactly the same format. You have mandatory pit stop between laps 10 and 12. So, only the winner of that race, moves on. There's not stages in it where certain people, not the top 5, one driver is going to advance into the feature.
And that driver's going to get a huge advantage because they've already run the whole race that day on the track. So they already know what the conditions are like. They can set their car up a little more. I think it's an interesting advantage. So let's talk about the Bud Shootout Qualifier race. Segue right into it. Now, 14 drivers are fighting to transfer into the main feature. Names like Darrell Waltrip, Lake Speed, Sterling Marlin, Greg Sachs, Dale Earnhardt, and Jimmy Spencer. Yes, I said Dale Earnhardt. He did not win a pole in 1997. And he has won the Busch Clash before, but like we said in eligibility, don't matter if you've won this race before, you got to win a pole the previous year. So the broadcast for the qualifier race was on ESPN. That's right. Nothing like a nice morning race on ESPN during ESPN's coverage of Speed Weeks 1998. Mark, remember all back in the day when there was just like the hundreds of hours of speed coverage? It all started, I feel like, with ESPN. ESPN just wanted to just showcase whatever was going on track during Speed Weeks. ARCA, IROC, with the Goodies Dash series, like everything that was there during Speed Weeks got highlighted on ESPN.
I loved watching that stuff, man. I loved when they had hours and hours of practice for Daytona, and they would spend the first 3 practices doing single car runs, and it'd be 4 hours of coverage, but you'd get great stories from the garage. The pit reporters would go around, and that's when this was like when the internet was like J-Ski was just getting popular. You'd find out your information from watching practice because you couldn't just go on the internet and Google stuff. You had to learn this way. I didn't have the internet till like 2003, James. My family was a late adopter of the World Wide Web.
The people in the booth, Bob Jenkins, Benny Parsons, and Kyle Petty giving us the call from high above. Working down the beats on pit road, Dr. Jerry Punch and Bill Weber. Man, that's a tag team right there. And two credible sources, always.
Now, let's get into this race, James. Let's just hop into it. So at the start, we've got Sterling Marlin and Dale Earnhardt at the top of the green flag. They're linked up on the bottom, and the Chevy duo was also joined by the Ford Thunderbird of Greg Sachs. And they checked out from the field. 3-car breakaway right off the start.
Meanwhile, in the pack, Jimmy Spencer has driven his way from the 13th starting position to 4th in just 5 laps as he began to hunt down the front trio. Mr. Excitement is passing him high, low, through the middle, truly showing why he's earned that nickname.
And we get some great telemetry on board. We see how fast these guys are going, and about 195 miles an hour, James, starts hopping out in the draft, and they're going fast. That 3-car breakaway, it's going to be tough if the guys behind them don't get their stuff figured out and get in a single line. They might not catch him, but we've got a pit stop about to shake things up. So the biggest question is, James, what lap are the leaders going to come in for their pit stop? You have to come between 10 and 12.
Well, coming to lap 10, it seems like everyone is just going to make their mandatory 2-tire pit stop, except Dave Marcus. I guess he just wanted a little more TV time for the real tree people. It's hard to see a camo car every time on the track, Mark. That's why there's a lot of white on it. Now, Jimmy Spencer, we got to highlight his pit stop specifically, Mark. He has an amazing stop. He has one of the first stalls on pit road, which meant his team was able to service his car and get Jimmy back down pit road before leaders Marlin and Earnhardt could even see their pit boxes further down pit road. And by the time their crews were done and dropped the jacks, Spencer had blown by them on down pit road and overtook them. So once the stops were over, Jimmy Spencer had an unheard of 2-second lead over the field on a restrictor plate track. Mark, what is going on here?
Yeah, but the thing is, James, when you get a massive lead like that after a great pit stop at a restrictor plate track, you're going to be a sitting duck because you're running slower by yourself than everyone else in a pack behind you, just the way that the draft works. So the fast pack, might jump up behind him, and it comes as a surprise when a 4-pack draft ran Spencer down, but they couldn't get by him, and instead they just join him, and we've got a 5-car draft at the front of the field with 11 laps to go. And Spencer's Ford Thunderbird, he's just showcased he's the fastest car in this race. He just has pace on everyone.
But one by one, the contenders will fall to the wayside. Sterling Marlin hung Brett Beaudine out to dry for the 2nd position. A few laps later, Lake Speed would move under Marlin for 2nd, and Earnhardt decided to look to the outside and make it 3 wide. Wait, how is Dale Earnhardt not in 1st right now? He's the fastest car on the track, but he stalled his car coming out of the pits and fell all the way back to 9th. He's clawed his way up to 3rd, but that 5-car draft is now only a 3-car draft. And I don't care how fast your car is. If you don't have anyone to help you make a move, you're not going to be able to do it on a super speedway track.
Yeah, and the thing is, Spencer's just, it doesn't matter what anyone does behind him because he's able to hold off any charge from Lake Speed and Dale Earnhardt in the final laps. They don't even really make a move. There's no point. He crossed the lines first in a Walt Disney movie finish, and he wins the first ever Bud Shootout Qualifier race. And I love that Dale Earnhardt just gave up coming to the checkers. He's like, we're not going to get him. He just lays off the gas. That's save a few miles on the motor. There's no point in trying to run him down. Lake Speed had no chance.
No.
I think he had a chance coming off 2 down the backstretch, but then he might have lost the race to Earnhardt. So I guess but you got to go for it. But Spencer's car was just better.
He would have needed, I think, at least, when he had Beaudine and Marlin, probably if he was able to make that move. Yeah, he had a strong Taurus, but ultimately, the Thunderbird that Jimmy Spencer was driving was just much more superior. And when it came down to only having 3 cars, just couldn't pass him. So let's talk about that now, Mark, because the finish of this race, you have Jimmy Spencer in a Ford Thunderbird winning over Lake Speed in the brand new Ford Taurus. The Ford Thunderbird is the outdated model. That's obsolete. It's old technology. Here it is. Just beat the new technology, the best thing on the house. Now, if you look at this marketing standpoint, the people in Dearborn had to be pulling the hair out of their heads right now, thinking, we're not selling Thunderbirds. We're selling Tauruses. Why do we have a Thunderbird at the top right now? You know?
Yeah, and the thing is, so the Ford Taurus obviously new for 1998, the new model that Ford wants everybody to run, but NASCAR allows a certain overlap of when you can run your old car before you can switch to the new one. So some of the teams decided, since this is kind of a throwaway exhibition race, my Thunderbirds have been really good in testing on speedways. Maybe I'm just going to bring my Thunderbird. And quite a few teams did that because they were just the faster car and they hadn't developed everything for the Taurus in terms of a speedway package yet. So they knew the Thunderbird, they knew it was reliable, and they said, hey, this is a throwaway race that we're just running for cash. Let's just bring our Thunderbird. And Jimmy Spencer shows up with the old car and smokes everyone. And Greg Sachs also very fast at the beginning with the Thunderbird, right up in the lead draft. So if you're Ford, yeah, you don't want to see that, but I guess still a Ford won. But again, we're not selling Thunderbirds anymore. We're selling family sedans now. We're selling Tauruses, and that sports car just won the race.
Well, the thing is too, a lot of this is a chain of events that has just continued to snowball and now has just proven itself to unfold right here on the big race. You know, back in October, Ford had a test with the Taurus. All the teams were supposed to show up at least with one Taurus ready to go. Only one team showed up, the Wood Brothers, with one car. The reason why? Templates weren't made. There was a rush to get this car out, and it's proven to be quite an undertaking for a lot of these teams. And I think another big point to always bring up here is there was not that automation of assembly line race cars, you know, teams having fleets of cars to go back on. If you built a speedway car and it was good, that was your speedway car. That was your mule. You're going to keep running it. And to the point of Greg Sachs' car, I won the race here in July. It's a race winning proven car. Why? You'd be crazy not to run that car, but you got to be a team player too. So sacrifice performance for the sake of the brand. It's a double-edged sword, Mark. Sometimes you live by it and sometimes you die by it.
Hey, a couple years down the road, James, those Tauruses are going to be unbeatable at Daytona. So it's a slow burn, but we'll get there.
You know, it's interesting. I was thinking about that. That was the only Daytona 500 Ford ever won with the Taurus.
Because the Taurus went 7 seasons, right?
Yeah.
2005, 8 seasons. And then the Fusion came after that.
Yeah. That was the only one. Yeah, they won with the
and
Fusion,
they dominated.
Kansas.
Didn't they have all the cars in top 5?
Top 5 was just, and they won every single race, both the dual races and the Bud Shootout. They dominated with that car. But that was like you said, the predecessor. I feel like Ford really learned a lot of their mistakes and pitfalls from developing the 98 Taurus that helped them with the Taurus 2K. So, you know, it's interesting because you think about, oh, it's just an exhibition qualifier. No, there's a lot of like little nuggets in this race you can really learn from. So pay attention.
Honestly, though.
Seriously.
And we've got like tangent here a little bit, but like this isn't exclusive to Ford. We saw this the same in 05, 06 with the Dodge Charger. We saw teams running the old nose because they thought it was better until NASCAR said, no, you're not allowed. Dodge is mad. Get rid of those old noses.
Yeah.
So, you know,
several teams throughout 2004 too. Think about running the old Grand Prix bodies in the Xfinity series as well, instead of the newer Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm. Because it's just trying to find that competitive advantage and stuff that, you know, be like, I don't want to spend money doing R&D for this new stuff when it's going to be obsolete soon. Like when we have this old stuff that we know is good. So let's just run that old stuff. So it's an ongoing battle. But now we've got a new car coming. So, but we'll see what happens. But James, you made a note here about Benny Parsons trying to figure out a new name for the backstretch at Daytona International Speedway.
Yeah. So they just renamed it, you know, obviously 1998. I feel like it's safe to say that Daytona International Speedway is like Disney World of the racetracks, because it's got its like theme park-esque vibes. So why not rebrand the back straightaway? Benny couldn't figure out the name of it. So what is the name of the rebranded back straightaway? Was it A, the runway, B, the boogie chute, C, the super stretch, or D, the slingshot expressway?
I'm pretty sure, James, that it's C.
Yeah, it's super stretch. I thought boogie chute was my favorite.
I remember they used to have a commercial about like trying to sell super stretch grandstand tickets, because there used to be grandstands all the way down the backstretch at Daytona. So I remember seeing that. There was a huge hype up about the super stretch. So
yeah. Rip to the super stretch. Just rip. So many memories.
Now we park our cars there.
That used to be the best place you buy a cheap ticket for the super stretch, and then you bought your fan zone pass and you just hung out in the fan zone all day. You wouldn't go to the super stretch.
Nah,
that was the best thing to do. All right, so we got the little race out of the way, a little preview race. Now it's on to the main feature. So we can talk about who is in the feature with our Bud Shootout notable starters. All right, Mark, why don't you kick us off here? Who we got first?
Well, first up, we have Wallace, one of the Wallace brothers, and it's the Herminator, Kenny Wallace, in the number 81 Square D Ford Taurus for Philmar Racing. And Kenny has earned his way into the 1998 Bud Shootout by winning 2 poles on short tracks in 1997. And Kenny is a guy that we look back on, not much about his Cup career, but he was quite the accomplished Cup Series driver despite not winning a race in his career. And he won at Martinsville in the spring, his first career pole, and he won the pole at Bristol in the fall as well. So Kenny will also be making his first Bud Shootout appearance, and he's looking to strike, James.
He is. He's got that lightning car. So
Square D electrical. They always had great cars. I love their cars.
Yeah, they had 2 really great looking paint schemes just for Daytona, because I think they had his Daytona 500 car was an inverted color scheme. So the blue was where the yellow was and vice versa. So it really just popped more because it was more yellow. Next up, we have Ken Schrader in the number 33 Skoll Chevrolet for Andy Petrie Racing. I'm a Skoll man. Do-do-do-do-do. That's right. Ken Schrader has 2 victories in the Busch Clash. Now, they came during a period when Kenny Schrader and Rick Hendrick were dominating the front row of the Daytona 500, a streak of 3 years in a row. Schrader won the pole. For 1998, he's in his 2nd season behind the wheel of Andy Petrie's number 33. And he earned 2 poles in 1997. Both came at Loudon. And now, Mark, fun facts about the car Kenny is driving. That number 33 actually qualified Kenny for the first ever Winston Noble Million bonus that was run at the Daytona 500. So he is contending for that. Further fun fact about that car, Kenny would have a horrible wreck in the Thursday qualifying race, actually fractured his sternum, had to wear a bull rider's jacket with a plastic sheet in between it, like a thick piece of plastic, over his belt. And as he told Dick Berggren, "Oh, I'm not going to run the whole race, just the first 200 laps." Schrader would go on to finish 5th in the Bud Shootout car during the Daytona 500, which also qualified him for another Winston Noble bonus. So that car is a workhorse, my friend.
Next up, James, we have another Wallace brother. We've got Rusty Wallace driving the Blue Deuce, the Penske Ford Taurus for, of course, Penske Racing. And in 1997, Rusty Wallace finished a close 2nd to Jeff Gordon in the Busch Clash. Pretty good for a driver who originally wasn't supposed to be in the event. Rusty didn't win a pole in 96, but was selected as the fastest 2nd round qualifier wildcard. He won a pole in 1997 at Bristol in the spring. It was his 18th career pole. So the Wallace brothers swept the poles in 97 at Bristol. And Rusty could be out for some revenge today because, that rivalry between him and Jeff Gordon, it's not talked about a lot, but it's pretty legit, James.
It's pretty legit. They could have swung at each other, traded some blows, but we'll never know. But it's pretty It's pretty much on record that Jeff Gordon and Rusty Wallace during this time period were a bit of rivals, though it is always overshadowed by the unrivaled rivalry between Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon. Unrivaled.
Well, I think
go ahead.
I was just going to say, sorry. No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the only rivalry that does match up to Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon is Ricky Bobby and Jean Girard. It's the only one.
Maybe.
Now, what were you going to say?
How about the rivalry between Budweiser and Miller Lite? Because Rusty Wallace is driving the Miller Lite car in this Budweiser shootout. So
I don't really care for beer though, and I know you don't either.
Yeah. But it's a rivalry. It could be good.
All right. Next up, speaking of things I like to consume, let's talk about Todd Beaudine, the number 35 Tabasco Pontiac for Team Tabasco. That's right. Before it became the Tabasco fiasco, Team Tabasco and Todd Beaudine had a lot of promise entering the 1998 season. A new team with a substantial corporate sponsorship that had stake in the team, and a driver that acquired a pole in 1997 at Watkins Glen. Not too shabby himself. Don't think about where history takes this team, all right? Don't think about the Tabasco fiasco. I want you to unplug your brains and just enjoy the fact that Todd Beaudine is driving one of the hottest looking cars ever in NASCAR history. The Tabasco bottle car is the greatest thing ever. Man, that is beautiful. And it had a bumper cam. Just let time stop right there for this team, please. Amazing.
James, you the only Pontiac in the race?
Yeah, he is. Actually, no, He's not. Ernie Irvan is in this race.
Ernie Irvan, that's right.
36
in the Skittles car.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, next up, James.
Actually, no, too. Sorry, Ward Burton.
Oh, yes, the 22 MBNA car.
Yes.
Well, we're not talking about either of those guys for our next notable starter. We're going to talk about my boy, the strange starter, Mr. Mike Skinner, driving the number 31 Lowe's Chevy for RCR. And James, what if I told you that Mike Skinner was the only hope for Richard Childress Racing to claim their 6th Bud Bash, now the Bud Shootout, victory? Well, he is, James, because Dale Earnhardt isn't here. Dale Earnhardt didn't win a pole in 1997, and Dale Earnhardt finished 3rd in the qualifying race. So he is not in this. Mike Skinner is carrying the team. Mike Skinner won the pole for the 1997 Daytona 500, becoming the 2nd rookie in NASCAR history to win the Daytona 500 pole. Then he came back and backed it up in July, winning the pole for the Pepsi 400. Dale's not here, James. So let's look for this aggressive sophomore driver, Mr. Mike Skinner, to make his presence known. Mike Skinner, man, one of my all-time favorites. I'll say to this day, he's the best driver in NASCAR history that didn't win a cup race.
Should have won so many. So competitive in 1999. Next up, John Andretti driving the number 25 Budweiser Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports. You did not mishear that. John Andretti is driving for Hendrick Motorsports in this race. John Andretti was eligible for the season opening exhibition race after claiming the pole at Talladega in the spring of 1997, driving for Cale Yarbrough in the number 98. Now, Andretti drive for the number 43 car owned by Richard Petty for the 1998 season, but Petty is not eligible to compete with his team in the Bud Shootout. That's because the number 43 does not carry a Busch Beer or Budweiser contingency decal on the car. Richard Petty permitted John Andretti to be in this race, even though he has been quoted as saying that he does not drink beer. Can you believe that, Mark? The king of stock car racing has never drank a beer in his entire life.
Yeah, and the Petties have a rich history of no alcohol sponsors. So.
All stems from Mama. His mother was very strict about that. Ironic, if you think about it, because this whole sport is based off of prohibition.
Yeah, and it's also sponsored by Winston Cigarettes, and he has no issue with that. But
no issue with that. He smokes cigars like it's nothing. His mom was okay with that, but alcohol, I draw the line. I guess because tobacco is technically a cash crop. That's the only thing I could think that justifies it. I don't know. I didn't grow up in these eras. I grew up in the 90s, and so did Mark. So we didn't have to deal with any of this stuff. But Richard did permit John to compete in this race, even though he didn't drink. And I think there's this conspiracy theory, Mark, especially at the time it started to sprout. I don't really think it's anything of just hot air, but there's the conspiracy that NASCAR wanted the Bud car in the Bud Shootout.
I that makes sense. You know, Bud was spending a lot of money that season. NASCAR's 50th season, they even made Hendrick after this race. They ran the number 50 on that 25 car all year with the same font that they had on all of the marketing stuff for the 50th anniversary. And yeah, like Ricky Craven, so he didn't earn a pole. He was the normal driver of that number 25 car, or he hadn't been a second round qualifier that was fastest, so he wasn't in the exhibition. So Ricky's not eligible, but John Andretti got the ride. But people want to know, why not Bobby Hamilton? Because Bobby Hamilton won 2 poles for the Petty team in 97 at Pocono and Phoenix. And he also drove a Chevy, unlike Andretti, who's driving a Pontiac. Now, there is the GM tie in there, but it seems strange that Andretti would take his ride or his sort of ticket into this race and go to Hendrick, who just happens to be the Budweiser car. So maybe Budweiser footing the bill for this one so they can have a car in the race.
I think there is a little bit of that, but I think the biggest point to the whole argument comes down to a little contingency decal. The fact that Richard Petty did not even run it during the season actually makes his team ineligible to even be considered for the Busch Clash Bud Shootout, no matter what. If he wins the pole, his driver is like, yeah, I won the pole. It's like, congratulations. There's not that thought of like, oh, I'm in the shootout. Like, that's crazy, man. But like, it makes me think of back to when Red Bull was one of those teams I felt like was really strict with, like, we don't need contingency decals to ruin the aesthetic of our car. And they were strict about like maybe only having like a few. Like, they had the pole decal, but beyond that, they didn't have anything else. So it's like, man, it's that's something, dude. It's crazy. But Budweiser has had this happen kind of in the past. There was a special position in the Bud Shootout in 1995 and 1996 that was awarded to the Busch Series competitor who won the most poles in the previous season. And that car was sponsored by Busch, had I think it was number 95 and 96 each year. And David Green was the recipient each time. He won the most poles each year. And it's kind of like that, if you think about it like that, like another Busch say car kind of thing. So there's like all these little interesting Easter eggs in this race, man. So many little things that just pop up.
Yep. So we mentioned Bobby Hamilton. We should mention, so Bobby Hamilton did win 2 poles. He's not in this race, I guess. Didn't want to put a ride together for this one. And Robbie Gordon won the pole at Atlanta in 97. He is not in this race either. He's taking a sabbatical from NASCAR and running a couple years in kart again, because why not?
Can't wait to see him come back in 2000. Wonder how that'll be. Spoiler alert, we already know. Let's talk about the broadcast. So last race was on ESPN. You better find your remote, flip that channel, because the Bud Shootout was live on CBS, Mark, the home of the flag-to-flag coverage from the Daytona 500 since 1979. This broadcast is like a little mini Daytona 500 if you think about it.
It is. And in the booth, James, we've got Mike Joy, Ned Jarrett, and Buddy Baker, the winner of the inaugural Busch Clash. They're calling the action in those beautiful CBS Blazers. Stay classy up there, gentlemen. Looking fantastic.
That they are. In the pits, Dick Berggren and Ralph Shaheen worked the beat like the father and son duo. Do you see the resemblance, Mark?
They do look very alike. Like, they actually do. Like, we don't talk about that enough. They could easily be father and son.
That's because they probably like shot that down, and so that no one could talk about that. But here we are. We're bringing that back up. We're digging it out of the closet. No. So let's have some more trivia. Now, before Benny Parsons would cue the duck, Ken Squire would ask us an Aflac trivia question. Mark, here's our Aflac trivia question. Who has the most Daytona 500 pole positions?
That's a good question, James. I'm not really too up on my history from way back in the day, but if I had to take a guess, I would say it's probably Buddy Baker and Cale Yarborough.
Well, ding, 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 you're correct. Of course, it's common knowledge. Cale Yarborough is the man of poles at the Daytona 500, but Buddy Baker they both have 4 career poles for the Daytona 500. Also, since this question was asked back in 1998, Bill Elliott has joined that list. In 2001, he earned his 4th Daytona 500 pole to go along with his 3 consecutive poles from 1985 and 1987.
James, we've done the Aflac trivia question. We've established the booth. Let's talk a little bit more about this broadcast. Let's talk about the roof cameras. Now, commonplace today, we see them on almost every car, James, but during this broadcast, we get a mention that the roof cam is back for 1998. So what happened to them in 1997, James? Well, NASCAR found that cars equipped with these so-called roof cam had an unfair aerodynamic advantage over the other competitors when they did wind tunnel testing. So it was decided that until the producers and NASCAR can find a way to eliminate that advantage, NASCAR is going to ban roof cameras altogether. Now, the ruling did not affect bumper cams, and they still had cameras inside the cars. So the solution to this problem was to have every car carry the same pod on the roof and simulate the camera's placement, a solution for a severe issue that hindered the on-track product for competitors and the ability for producers to give fans the best seat in the house back. So you see that today, every single car has that little dome thing on top, and that's where the roof cam would go, whether they're carrying one or not, just so everyone has the same advantage. And I'm surprised it took them that long to come up with that.
Well, that's the thing. It's just, you don't know it's a problem until you figure it out. And that's the thing. They didn't realize that was an issue. And that's the thing. You know, the NASCAR boom of the 90s really sought for more and more coverage and more ways to bring new coverage to the fans. With that came camera placements, you know, whether it be robo cams on the walls and the placement of cameras throughout the cars with suspension components, inside, outside, exterior shots. So there's always the knowledge of things happening, and especially the knowledge of aerodynamics. Aerodynamics, it's hard to believe for a lot of fans, but aerodynamics didn't really become a thing that was talked about so constantly until the 90s. Especially at super speedways. So to have the hindrance of the camera on the car, it showcased that NASCAR really took the competitor's side to this, but they also really cared about the producers too. They knew that it was important for them to showcase the coverage on the track and to give these different angles to the fans. And definitely the roof camera is the best seat in the house. So glad that fans got it back for 1998. Sucks that they didn't have it for 1997. But it shows also the evolution of the technology too in the camera. Camera got smaller to the size of a pen, as Mike Joyce said.
James, do you want to just jump into this one? We'll just throw the green flag and we'll just start this race on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and from the drop of the green flag, it's a dogfight at the front of the pack. Pole sitter Mark Martin doesn't get to even lead lap 1. Ken Schrader, he's high, wide, and handsome through 3 and 4 and makes his way around Martin to lead the first 9 laps of the event. Now, like Schrader said during the pre-race show, I think the front is the place to go. And that's because it was a mad scramble behind him as the rest of the field ran side by side, 2 by 2 from 4th on back as the entire field makes its way around the World Center of Racing. They're truly revolving around the world, if you think about it.
And I believe, James, Mike Joy mentioned that the pole sitter for this race has not led the first lap. I think like the 3 out of the last 4 or something like that. So sitting on the pole is not really beneficial if you look at the statistics. So
yeah, it's all a random draw. And if you think about the statistics of it, Jimmy Spencer started 13th in his race and won it. Rusty Wallace starts 13th, so could he win it?
Mark Martin did mention in pre-race that he wasn't feeling too good about his number 6 Valvoline Ford Taurus, and well, he wasn't out front very long. So everyone now, James, is content. They're just going to stay in line for a few laps. And so Jeff Gordon decides to go 3 wide down the back straightaway and take second position. And after that move, Mike Skinner and Ward Burton do a little bit of body slamming. They come together through the tri-oval, and it's only lap 5, James, but the race is only 25 laps. So you got to get to the front.
Things are going to begin to settle down as the top 5 cars break away from the pack. Ken Schrader, Jeff Gordon, Ward Burton, Todd Beaudine, and Bill Elliott pace the field. And just like the previous race, coming to lap 10, leader Ken Schrader is going to get hard on the brakes off turn 4. He's making his way onto pit road. It looks like Jeff Gordon and Ward Burton might just blow past him and stay out, but they follow Schrader as the entire field makes their mandatory pit stop on lap 10. Talk about a land rush coming onto pit road. Joe Nemechek's even off into the grass. Geez, but he makes it into his pit box, fortunately.
And Rusty Wallace had a great stop. He came onto pit road second to last, 16th place, got on smoothly, had the 5th pit stall available. He quickly got in his box. He was up to speed when he left the pits. Unlike many other teams, like you said earlier, James, they have to drive all the way to the end. He's already come and gone before they've made their pit stop. And after the stop, Jeff Gordon has taken the lead with Jimmy Spencer, who started last in 2nd place. Where did he come from? And as mentioned before, Rusty Wallace is up in 3rd with that great pit stop. Ernie Irvin, who we haven't mentioned yet, and Ward Burton now round out the top 5. So these pit stops, James, like we said in our preamble, these are going to really shake up these races.
It does, and it does stretch the field out, but on lap 15, they've all accordioned back together for one of the most thrilling laps of the event, because the leaders bunch back up together into an exciting 9-car pack with less than 10 laps left in this race. Everyone is jockeying for position. Rusty Wallace blows by Jimmy Spencer on the outside for second, only to have Ernie Irvin make the move on the inside into the next corner as the leaders continue to shuffle at the top of the running order.
A few laps later, Ward Burton puts a massive block on Ken Schrader in turn 1. It looked like Burton was sending Schrader to Orlando with that move. And Ken Schrader may have the fastest car, but he wants to take it to victory lane, James. He doesn't really want to go to Disney World right now.
No, get him off 5-4. He's just wanting to be on the Daytona International Speedway. But with 5 laps to go, we get our first caution of the event when Ward Burton and John Andretti make contact coming down the back super stretch. Looked like bump drafting gone wrong as Ward Burton was sent into the outside wall. Heavy contact and damage to the number 22. It brings out the caution. But Mark, part of me believes there would be no caution if Ward Burton had driven back to the garage area, and everything that is about to happen wouldn't unfold. But that's another universe.
Yeah, he got it stopped in the grass in the middle of 3 and 4, so we have to go yellow. He was off the racing line, James. We could have kept going green. He was way down there on the grass, but safety first. But they did race back to the caution flag, but they didn't get the caution until the start of the next lap, so they had to do another lap. The field gets a restart in this universe with 2 laps to go. And riding on board with Bobby Labonte, he makes his way through the gears. His car begins to slow on the exit of the second turn before it takes off to the wall. And oh no, James, Joe Nemechek has nowhere to go, and he plows into the rear of Labonte's car, and both cars are destroyed, though Labonte can limp that Pontiac back to the garage area.
Woe is Joe. Now, Mark, I've got to call this wreck like I see it, okay? Because sometimes Buddy Baker and Ned Jarrett, they just wouldn't. Now, that could have been just because of the fact that they didn't want to point fingers and blame other drivers for an incident, or they just probably didn't have the best angle to really see each replay and decipher it in real time. But, you know, I'm just spoiled because I grew up with Wally Dallenbach as my commentator, and he would just call it like he saw it. I saw that tire go down, and that's pretty obvious there that that's what happened to Bobby Labonte. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. With that incident, it now brings us to a 1-lap shootout to decide the Bud Shootout.
Yellow flag laps don't count. We have to do 25 green flag laps.
That's right. So Jeff Gordon is the leader. He is going to lead the field down to the restart lines. but he doesn't get going. Rusty Wallace has already beaten Jeff Gordon to the restart box. Gordon seems like he's just going to get off the gas, but to everyone else, it seems like he has issues because the pack just swallows him up on the restart.
Meanwhile, up front, the brothers Wallace and awesome Bill Elliott with all three of their Tauruses are lined up on the outside as they battle the lone Thunderbird in the field driven by Jimmy Spencer. But Spencer has no friends on the bottom as Todd Beaudine makes it a Ford Taurus train coming down the super stretch. And as the leaders make their way through turns 3 and 4, the three Tauruses set sail towards the checkers with Rusty Wallace winning the 1998 Bud Shootout over little brother Kenny Wallace in second, and Bill Elliott in third. And James, like we said, the Miller car won the Bud race.
Wow, I mean, that is important, but let's get down to victory lane with Ken Squire because we have to speak with Rusty Wallace. I got to find out exactly what happened on that restart.
Did you fake him out on that restart at the last lap?
Man, I don't know what I've done. All I know is that when I was ready, I had this thing cleared out and I was ready to rock. I think that's always been one of my strong points. It's got me in trouble a couple times, but evidently I nailed it and he nailed it and something broke in his car because the whole field drove past him. But
man, I don't know what I've done. Rusty, it's pretty clear. You jumped that restart, just got a little too eager and you wanted to beat Wonder Boy. You beat him all right, but I don't think you beat him fair and square. Might I say, Jimmy Spencer, did you change lanes before reaching the start-finish line? Mark, if I have to be honest, I think Kenny Wallace is the real winner of the 1998 Bud Shootout. Give it up for Kenny Wallace. Yeah. Way to make your debut in this race, buddy.
It's just the way she goes, man. This is an interesting one at the end because you hear Jeff Gordon in his interview at the end say, well, Rusty definitely jumped the start, but it didn't matter because I broke fourth gear going up through the gears. So I wouldn't have won anyway. But Rusty also shouldn't be the winner because it's pretty clear to me, James, like you can't beat the leader to the start finish line on a restart like that. So Jeff assumed they were going to wave the start off, which is commonplace if that second place car in a double file restart gets a bigger jump. They're like, well, we'll wave the start off, but that didn't happen. So he wasn't expecting them to go green and they did. But again, he said it didn't matter because he broke a gear. But yeah, and Jimmy Spencer changed lanes. It's almost like in these exhibition races, they're just not officiated the same as maybe a Daytona 500 would be. But if this was the end of the Daytona 500, would you call it that way and take the win away from, you know what I mean? It's tough to make a call like that in a race winning situation.
Well, like I said, Jeff backed off because he knew that he did not have control of the restart. The leader is supposed to control the restart. At no point did Jeff Gordon truly have control of that start. So he backed off. And when he backs off, you're supposed to be going full tilt with these cars. If not, you can break a gear, you can break a valve. That's unfortunately what Jeff did. He broke a gear with it. So him trying to actually do the right thing and get off cost him not only the race, but the ability to try to do it again. And, more or less the polarizing Jeff Gordon, oh no, not him again. Hope Jeff Gordon doesn't win moment might have hit here where NASCAR was like, well, Jeff isn't going to win. I guess, well, let's just let someone else win here. And I don't think many fans disagreed with that result and seeing like Rusty Wallace kind of beat Jeff Gordon, especially Rusty Wallace fans who definitely did not like Jeff Gordon at this time.
Yes, sir. And James, let's hop into basically our second last segment. Let's rate this race, James. Let's rate it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll go first here. I think the event as a whole, including the qualifier, I think it was pretty compelling. I'd give it an 8. I enjoyed it. I think, like I said, this is my favorite. I won't say it's the best. It's my favorite Bud Shootout format for sure. And I enjoyed both races. They're both fantastic.
I would say it was a good race. I'd give it an 8 for sure. Cause you get 2 good races, 2 short ones, and they're nice races, not too much weight to it as far as like, oh no, this is going to have implications here and there. It's just a simple exhibition race. Win it, you win it. If you don't, you don't. And I think there's much more depth with the nuggets of knowledge in this race, because I'm pretty sure you learned a lot just from watching this one.
Oh, I did. I learned lots, man. This is a fantastic race that just shows you some of the nuances of that era when it comes to racing. And like we said, we learned about the roof cams and all kinds of things like that. So we learned quite a bit from this one. But what I said again, like what I really did learn is that this is my favorite Bud Shootout format. It's just can't be beat, man. Nowadays, it's a different. We're trying to like maximize how many cars are allowed in, and this year we're doing heat races, and it's just become. When they made it 60 laps, that was really when it became like they were trying to make it its own race event, when it's really just supposed to be a fun part of Speed Weeks, like a reward for the drivers that won a pole. Then it became $1 million paycheck, and we want to have as many cars as possible in it. So yeah, this is when it was the most special.
Yeah, agreed. It's definitely at its peak right here of just perfect, racing event. So the Bud Shootout, the 1998 Bud Shootout. Mark, did you enjoy the script?
Oh, I did. I had a blast, man. This is a fun one to watch. I watched this with my wife actually, and she enjoyed it as well. She doesn't watch a lot of old races with me, but she thought it was very cool. She was a Rusty Wallace fan growing up, watching racing with her dad. So obviously it had an outcome that she appreciated.
Right on.
Well, James, I think it's time to take a moment to thank our friends at Blue Emu over here above my shoulder, if you're watching me, who make fantastic products to aid in your recovery. Like my favorite product, the recovery bath, also classic Blue Emu super strength. They also have the lidocaine cream, the continuous spray, all kinds of amazing products to help you recover and get a little bit of relief from those minor, muscle aches and things like that. So fantastic products I use all the time as a runner. And thank you so much for everything you do, and the official pain relief product of NASCAR.
That's right. And if you want to keep up to date with this podcast, follow us on social media at Flashback to the Tracks on Twitter and Instagram. Follow us at Flashback Track. You can find us and link up with us. Mark is on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Always reach out to us. And we'll always be looking forward to suggestions from our fans. So reach out and tweet us, send us some things. What should we cover? If we haven't thought of something, you have something that's interesting that we might not know, send us a link and we'll check it out for sure.
Agree, James. Follow us at Flashback_track on all your social medias. Well, James, that was a fun one, man. Appreciate the suggestion. James came up with that one. It was fantastic, and looking forward to the next episode. I like this 90s stuff, man. This 90s NASCAR stuff. It's tough to beat.
Yeah, but the demo likes the mid-2000s stuff. That's why I like the NASCAR in the 90s, because that's like what I know. That's my wheelhouse. I like researching that stuff, which, as you can see, I did a lot of deep diving here on this one.
Yeah. That's the way it should be, man. We gotta teach the people with our educational content, edutainment, as I like to call it.
Well, until next time, everyone be safe out there, and we'll catch you in the next episode.